everybody, and welcome back to a long overdue Bouger book talk video. Now, I have been off of YouTube pretty much all of February because I have been doing yet another read a book every day challenge, which means today we are getting to do our second for YouTube 51 books I read last month video. So welcome to the 51 books I read in February. Just like last time, even though we are far more high tech now, I will talk through all of the books in order this time. I failed to do that last time because of some rejigging, but this time the books are piled up in the order that I read them. So we'll go through them in chronological order, tell you what they're about and a couple of my thoughts, and I will try to keep the reviews for each book as short as possible, because if I go for a minute each, we're going to be here about an hour. Last time I failed to do this, and I do not see that changing. I also promise when I remember where the books have been bought from, I will tell you where I got them from and roughly how much I paid, because we are all about keeping things like that transparent. We're buying books on a budget, a la Bouger, pronounced the French way. So let's dive in and start off with book number 1. Now, the first book I read in February was First Position. It seemed to make sense. First position, first of the month, first day of my challenge. Now, this is a ballet romance. It is super spicy. And it follows a ballerina called Sylvie and a couple of other ballerinas. My absolute fave being Alessandro, who is kind of pitched as this new love interest at the start of the book. And I just didn't get enough Alessandro. Total honesty, I loved him so much. Swear down, did not call any of the reveals or plot twists in this. It definitely kept me on my toes. Ballet pun intended. And it's a book from one of my absolute favourite publishing houses of all time, Mills and Boon. So overall, I was really happy with it. I enjoyed reading this. The first book was a success. It is a shame the same cannot be said for the rest of day one, because I finished that book and was on such a high, I immediately picked up another book. One that I've had on my physical TBR since I can't even remember. It's just been on my shelf for ages. I read the synopsis and was like, ooh, marriage in crisis, potential falling in love with her sister's fiance. And it didn't hit the nail on the head. Okay, the problem with this is that the book does such a good job of depicting the falling apart of Kate's marriage and lends so much attention to that topic and then Kate's mission to prepare Ben for his marriage to Prue, that the surprise and, I mean, I'm going to spoil it as an FYI, the reconciliation fell really flat for me. It had done too good a job of painting Kate's husband not as the bad guy, but showing why they weren't working together. So yeah, you can consider me a little bit let down by this one. And it was a big book, so spent a lot of time on it. We don't have time to spare in this challenge. I can't remember where I got this. I'm not going to recommend you go and grab a copy. It was just, in fact, I'm not even going to say it was okay. I did not enjoy this. Oh, and I actually got First Position off of the TikTok shop. And if you weren't aware, HarperCollins are quite present on the TikTok shop, and I thoroughly recommend you check them out on there if you can, because they run a lot of flash sales and they go live often and have the books at 50% off when they do that. So quite a few of the books you'll see on this challenge I either got from the TikTok shop or they were actually gifted to me at an event I will discuss when I get to the books that I got from that event. Now, my final book for day one, I thought was going to be a really solid bet. Everyone raves about Olivia Dade. She's this bastion of plus-size rep, and she's going to be at the Romance Authors and Readers Expo in Edinburgh this year. So I thought, hey ho, I've got an Olivia Dade book. They're meant to be great romance novels. Let's give Shipwreck a read. And I have to tell you guys, I'm glad I got this on a trip to 66 Books, the massive wholesale warehouse in Hemel Hempstead, okay? Because if I'd paid full recommended retail price for this, I would have been quite let down. I really didn't like this, and I feel so bad for giving negative reviews. Okay, if you know me, you know this is something that I struggle with because I hate being negative, but this felt like wading through treacle. It did not grip me. I did not enjoy a moment of it. If I was physically capable of DNFing a book, I would have DNF'd this and the book before, but I'm a trooper. I pushed on through. So, I mean, if you love this book, please let me know why. Because it just it didn't hit for me. It's about two actors who are on a remote location together and they've had a one night stand and then get cast together and they spend years avoiding the tension and then eventually give in. It was, yeah, it was not my cup of tea for sure. Book number 4, however, on day 2 of February, can we just celebrate the fact that by day 2, I was already picking up book 4. I read The Fake Dating Game, and this was fantastic. This got me back on track. Okay, this is quite clearly an romance, fake dating, very much inspired by Supermarket Sweep, if you've ever watched that TV show, which I did as a kid. So I loved the concept of this. I loved the characters. I actually got my copy of this from the TikTok shop and then went to an event where I got given a second copy of it, so I have a spare. This is one of the inaugural titles of Mills and Boon's new publishing house, Afterglow, which are sort of more diverse, spicy, BookTok really focused books. And this one, absolute slay. 5 stars. Loved, loved, loved. It was hella spicy. It was hella camp. It was hella fun. Really, really enjoyed this. So yeah, this is one I've recommended to people several times over since reading, for sure. My 5th book on February 3rd was The Bookbinder's Guide to Love. And the reason I read it on the 3rd of February is because I was invited to HarperCollins Date with a Book event where they had a couple of romance authors, they had a load of book influencers in, and it was like a really cute day. But one of the authors in attendance was Catherine Garbera. So I met her. This copy of the book is signed, which I love. This was fantastic. I cannot wait for the next 2 books to come out. The main character in this, Serafina, is, unsurprisingly from the title, a bookbinder, and she inherits a box of books from her mentor, whose grandson turns up demanding the box because he too is a professional bookbinder who had been estranged from his granddad. And these items bring the two of them together. It's witchy, it's cozy, and it sets itself up for further books following Serafina's best friends. So I'm really looking forward to it because I love Catherine's style. This was fantastic. It's signed. Catherine's really nice. I was lucky enough to get a copy of this sent to me before the event in a little like PR box. So my copy of this is free, but it is also up on the TikTok shop where you can grab it for less than recommended retail price, which is what we like to see. I got back from that event on the 3rd and picked up Hate at First Sight. I'll be honest, I got this from the works and I was kind of hoping it would give more than it gave. They're office-based enemies to lovers. There's an initial miscommunication where she thinks he's making fun of her, but he's not. He's into her at a party, and then we jump forward like 5 years where they're forced to work together on a project. I just felt it was actually quite light on the romance. We didn't get enough of the two of them falling in love, them being in a relationship. It was way more focused on the work, and I was not interested enough in the work for that. So happy that I got it from the works because it meant I paid like £3 for it. At most, I will have paid a fiver for it. So not the end of the world, but I'm not going to say, oh my God, run out and grab a copy. This was just okay. Book number 7 was Love Me Do by Lindsay Kelk. I honestly can't remember where I got this. Controversially, it might actually have been full price at Waterstones. I know. I can't remember why. What I do know now is that it is up on the TikTok shop for less than that at the minute. But I would have got this literally when it came out, and it's just sat on my shelf since. It's cute. It's about a greetings card writer who goes to visit her workaholic sister over in LA, and she tries to set up like a friend she makes there with her sister's neighbor, but she's falling in love with the neighbor while she's trying to set him up with her friend. It all gets quite messy. It was cute. And I think more so than the romance in this, what I ended up really falling in love with was the depiction of LA. Lindsay is obviously a big fan of LA, and I just felt a lot of warmth. And for somewhere I've never been, I felt like I got a very good sense of place. So I'll recommend it on that front. It was good. It was very much giving me, if only I could move to the US kind of vibe, you know? That had me on a bit of a high. So I immediately then went and picked up these two BK Morrison books. These are books 2 and 3 in the Love Light Farms series. If you have not heard of these, have you been living under a rock? These are phenomenal. I read Love Light Farms kind of just after Christmas because loads of other book influencers were going, oh my God, Love Light Farms. It's about Christmas Tree Farm. It's the best book you should be reading at this time of year. So I grabbed myself a copy of that from Asda. And these two have since come into Asda. So I got 2 of them for £4.50 each because it's 2 for £9. Phenomenal bargain. Amazing books. The first 3, so Love Light Farms, Mixed Signals, and In the Weeds, follow the 3 co-owners of Love Light Farms, this Christmas tree farm over in America. Book 1 was about like the young woman who takes it on with her 2 friends and her best friend who she's always been in love with. They have to kind of fake date because an influencer's coming to like look at the farm and create content around them, and she's lied on the application to have this influencer come visit. So it's a best friends to lovers romance that's super cute and super Christmassy. In the Weeds is book 2. It follows Beckett, who's like in charge of the gardening and the plants, the Christmas trees on the Christmas tree farm, and the influencer from book 1, Evelyn St. James. It's yet again stunning. They have a passionate night together before either of them knows who the other is, and they kind of never move on from it. And so in this one, she returns to Love Light Farms, and Beckett gets like a second chance with her. Book 3, Mixed Signals, is about Layla, who runs the cafe at Love Light Farms, and local policeman Caleb, who's been a policeman in the first 2 books and has just started like a career change to being a teacher. And they agree to teach each other how to be better dates. Oh, it's brilliant. I cannot wait for book 4 to come out. That one I think is called Business Casual or Business Usual or Business as Usual. I can't remember the title, but that's following the MC from book 1's brother, who has been a character all the way through. The Love Light Farm series are amazing. And so far, you can grab all of these in Asda. So I thoroughly recommend these. If you cannot tell, I am a humongous fan of BK Morrison now. Book number 10 was The Witch is Back, which I also think... No, I didn't get this from Waterstones. I think I got this from The Works. Which is phenomenal because this is a fantastic book. I thoroughly recommend you pick this one up, and it's definitely set up for sequels, and I will 100% be getting my hands on books 2 and 3 following Emmeline's 2 best friends who she runs a bar with. The premise of this one is that Emmeline has kind of left witch society after her fiance basically left her before they could get married, and she has run away. That there is great shame, but because they had a wedding contract in place, Bastian has to return and convince Emmeline to marry him, because if she doesn't, his mum will die as an effect of the curse. There is this whole, why did Bastian run away? They were pretty much best friends, and so him running away came out of the blue. The tension in this is so good. It's so good. It's former best friends to enemies, marriage contract goodness with all the witchy vibes. A 10 out of 10. I don't know if you can still get this at the Works. I know you can definitely get it on the TikTok shop. But if you see this somewhere, oh my goodness, grab a copy. You will not regret it. It was fantastic. I enjoyed that one so much. I needed to pick up another book that day, so I read Done and Dusted, which I had seen all over TikTok. This was in the Works, so I got it super cheap, and it was fantastic. It's a brother's best friend, cowboy, horse riding romance. And honestly, it's a total slay. If you can't tell from the cover, this is a brilliant book. I cannot wait for the sequel to come out soon. Honestly, I thoroughly recommend it. She is a like horse rider, and she's been thrown off of her horse and had an accident, and now she kind of can't get back on the horse, both metaphorically and literally. And apparently the phrase done and dusted is what you call it when that happens, when you've been thrown from a horse and you can't get back on. So her brother's best friend, Luke, helps her in secret overcome this, and they they're so cute together. I love them so much. This was fantastic. Grab a copy if you can. Book number 12 was The Devil in Blue Jeans, another cowboy romance. This is the start of a new series called The Naked Moose. Like, it's the name of a bar that the main girls in this series take over, and they move into this small cowboy town, and obviously all the cowboys fall in love with the girls, which we love as a vibe. It is yet again another Afterglow book from Mills and Boon. Total honesty, I got given this for free at the event I went to. I did enjoy it, yes, but unfortunately my standards for cowboy romances are incredibly high, and they have been since I read the Chestnut Springs books. Done and Dusted was great, but not as good as Chestnut Springs, and this one wasn't as good as Done and Dusted, if that makes sense. If I have a sliding scale of cowboy romances, this one's not at the top. It was still a good read. It's just that my standards are pretty high now. And if you want to grab a copy, I know you can definitely get this off the TikTok shop. Next up, I read the Frenemy Fix Up, and I actually read this at the hairdressers. As I got my hair dyed, because that's what I do when I go to the hairdressers. I take a book with me and I read the entire book in the time it takes me to have half a head of colour done. Fun fact, I also read this before the book technically came out, because I got given this copy at the influencer event I went to. It's part of a series called The Six Gems. This is actually book 4, so I don't know what happens in the other books. You can totally be reading them as standalones. This is the first one that's under Afterglow with Mills and Boon yet again. It was very, very spicy. It was about a yoga instructor, and I want to call Colin an accountant. Yeah, Colin the accountant, that's sounding right. And he has a heart issue and needs to start relaxing, so he takes time off work and asks Shay, who he actually used to go to school with, to help better his general health and well-being. So she takes him on as a client, and although they are not fans of each other, it gets hella spicy. Did I like it? Yes. Did I love it? No. It was a good read. You know I like a spicy book. But I didn't really fall in love with either Shay or Colin. It just wasn't quite my vibe, but it was a very good book. I'm trying to be fair in terms of saying, well, I didn't like it, but not because it wasn't a good book. You know, I obviously got this copy for free, but I do know you can get it off of the HarperCollins TikTok shop right now. Then I went on to read 2 of, I'm going to say, the best books I read as part of this challenge, okay? I had a day of just insane goodness befall upon me, because book number 14 was The Dead Romantics. This book is phenomenal. If you have ever seen the movie Just Like Magic with Reese Witherspoon and Mark Ruffalo, A, good for you. B, you are gonna love this book. If you haven't heard of or seen that film, go do that now, okay? It's a must-see rom-com. Reese Witherspoon's a ghost and she's haunting Mark Ruffalo because he moves into her flat, okay? It's so brilliant. This book is kind of the book-ish version of that film, because Florence is a ghostwriter and her brand new editor, Benji, dies at the beginning of the book, whilst waiting for Florence to hand in the next novel. So you find out she can see the dead and always has been able to. So Benji is haunting her, and she has to basically believe in love again to write this romance novel. And Benji's ghost is helping her do that. But things happen. There are shenanigans. Everything is not as it seems. This is fantastic. Quite honestly, 10 out of 10. 5 stars. Big thumbs up. Christy thoroughly recommends. This is fan-dabby-dozy. Loved this. I actually think I bought this in Waterstones when it came out because I was really excited for it. I liked the premise. And I then didn't end up reading it for some reason. It sat on my shelf all this time, and that is a travesty because this book is fantastic. It deserves to be read by everybody. I love this book so much. I thought to myself, nothing's going to top this. No book I read in this challenge is going to be better than this. And then I was immediately proven wrong because I picked up Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Okay, fun fact about just acquiring this book. This copy that I have in my hands is from the works. I went and I got it on the day of release. Really happy I did. Paid a £5 for it. This book is worth so much more than a £5. This was so good. But the book is also £5 from Hachette's TikTok shop. And I forgot that I had pre-ordered it from Hachette. So, and then I made a mistake on that pre-order and pre-ordered 2. So I have 3 copies of Bride. Oops, what a happy accident. Because this book is fantastic. If you haven't had someone raving about this, where have you been? This is the latest book by Ali Hazelwood. There is actually, just out of frame, an entire section of my bookshelf dedicated to Ali Hazelwood books. So I'm a fan of her anyway. And for those of you who don't know, her first book, The Love Hypothesis, is widely accepted and known to be a published version of Raylo fanfic, because Ali Hazelwood was a fan fiction writer up on AO3. Honestly, I love that for her. This is published Omegaverse. We have gone full throttle. Ali Hazelwood's mission is to make AO3 fanfiction-esque content palatable to the masses. And boy, does she succeed. I'm not an Omegaverse girly, but after reading this, I'm in love. I am in love. She's done it again. This is a marriage of convenience romance novel between a vampire and an alpha werewolf. And it's so good. Let's just say Misery, the vampire, has a very good reason for agreeing to marry Lo, and you find out what that mystery is as the book goes on. You also have every chapter starting off with a sentence or 2 from Lo's point of view, and they are the best thing since sliced bread, because Lo is very much a Mr. Darcy-esque character, stoic, aloof, serious, and gruff. And so getting little hints of what he's thinking is so cute, because Misery is convinced that he hates her, and then you see these little snippets of how Lo really feels, and you melt. For example, okay, this one's a few sentences at the start of chapter 7. But it says, they rarely touch. When they did, her wrist accidentally brushed against the front of his shirt, and he found himself tearing off the piece of fabric where her smell was most intense. He slipped it in his pocket and now carries it everywhere. It's so good. And it's £5 at the works, guys. A slay. An absolute slay. I love this. This might have been the best book, actually, that I read throughout the whole of this challenge. Because it doesn't get much better than this, guys. This was pretty damn perfect. With book 16, I came to realise that the good times could not last, because I was sent Bloodstream by the lovely marketing team at the works, and I really appreciate it, because I like a Formula 1 romance. She's a Lauren Asher Dirty Air stan. But I hate to say it, but I'm going to be honest with you. I hated this. If I write a book, I just want to let you all know that this is the book that let me know I could do it, because I could do better than this. I hated it. I thought it was really boring. I thought there actually just weren't any redeeming qualities. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the writing style. I am so sorry. But I just kind of want to move on. I'm glad I didn't buy it. Yeah, in theory, this totally should have been my cup of tea, and it just wasn't. Yeah, this one was a miss for me. Sorry. If you want a copy, you can get it from the works, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, actually. Oh, I feel terrible for saying it, but I've got to be honest. I then continued on with arguably the worst day of this challenge by reading The Problem with Perfect. I got this from the works. I can't remember how long ago, and I can't remember how much for. But I'm going to tell you now, don't bother grabbing a copy, okay? This was the wrong kind of camp. for me when it comes to an romance. It wasn't even saccharine. It went beyond. It was like I was drinking liquid diabetes. It felt weirdly performative. I loved the concept. I thought the concept was really cute. Basically, Ethan works for like with this big influencer called Chase. Chase goes off on like a strop, and so Ethan goes and hunts down Chase's identical twin brother, Bo, and obviously Ethan and Bo, they've got a different vibe going on than Ethan and Chase, right? It had so much promise. It had promises of authenticity and being your true self and what that means and being a good person, but it just fell flat in every single regard for me. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the writing style. It felt cringy to me, and it takes a lot for me to cringe. I have read as part of this challenge way better queer romances than this, and so I can't recommend you pick it up. I really didn't like it. And that was only book 2 of the day, because I finished off the day with Like a Charm, which I'm glad was only a little teeny tiny book. I grabbed it from the works, so I got it on, I think, the 3 for £6 offer. And I'm just glad I didn't spend more than £2 on it, because it sucked. There was, total honesty, barely any romance in this at all. Esme finds out, like, in the past that her mum may have put a spell on her current then boyfriend, Jamie. And at this point in the story, she returns back to her hometown. Her relationship with her mum is still not great because of the lies around that particular spell being set. And she basically reconnects with Jamie, who has no idea why she's left, because he doesn't know that Esme and her family are witches. But we barely see any Jamie in this book. Like, it focuses way more on what's going on in the town with the magic, and I just wasn't interested at all. I found this boring, and I'm glad it was so small, because I didn't have to force myself to read it for very long. But yeah, that was the worst day of the challenge, like, by far, because I didn't enjoy a single one of the books that I picked up. So let's move on to... Oh no, I was going to say better things, but now I've remembered what book 19 is. I got my copy of Still Unwritten from the works as well, and I hated it. I didn't 100% clock that it was a K-pop romance, but the moment I did, I was like, yes, I love a good K-pop romance. This is the worst K-pop romance I've read. Just saying. It's not small. I'm glad I only paid like a few pounds for it from the works, because it was boring. Yeah. I'm being honest with you here, guys. Didn't love it. It was really slow. I just didn't feel like you got a lot of romance in it at all. They were far more focused on work and the mystery of Fran finding out what happened with her mother. And there wasn't enough Jae-sung for me at all. I loved him. I wanted more of him, and I barely got any. So yeah, unimpressed. Did not enjoy this at all. Would not recommend. I did, however, balance that out by following it up with an absolute slay. Enemies to Lovers is about a touring cast who are going around America performing the musical Lizzie and Darcy. So it gets quite meta. We have these 2 musical theatre performers who are quite literally Lizzie and Darcy, with a cast of characters around them who are basically all of the characters from Pride and Prejudice. And it's spicy. It's so good. It was funny, it had heart, it was well-paced. Honestly, I think if you're using Pride and Prejudice as a basis, you're on for a winner anyway, and this one hit it out of the park. I loved this. It was vibrant, it was colourful, it just had a lot of heart to it. And brilliant spice. Spice that enhanced the plot, that moved us forward. I loved it. Thoroughly recommend. I grabbed this, I think, on the 3 for £6 offer at the works. So if you can, grab yourself a copy. One of the better romances I read as part of this challenge, 100%. Big fan. But we have to balance out the good with the bad. And book 21 was Knowing Me, Knowing You. It had a seemingly promising premise, Alex and Jihan basically meet on New Year's one day. They're sort of the person that the other's never forgotten. Nothing romantic happened, but it could have, ships in the night, that kind of thing. And we have a situation where Jihan turns up like 5 years later as a consultant at Alex's firm, and he basically is making the call on whether Alex should be made redundant or not. Honestly, I just felt like it was a bit of a damp squib. There was promise there, but it never really delivered for me. I found it boring. As you say, this fell into the boring pile for me, for sure. And I'm sad because I really liked the concept. I liked Alex and I liked Jihan when I first met them. And then we jumped forward 5 years and I wanted to fall asleep. I got this copy from the influencer event I headed to, and you can get a copy off the TikTok shop, but meh. I would say it was just okay, but it kind of wasn't okay. I felt like I wasted my time on it. Total honesty, she's been a bit of a savage today. Next up, I read Fancy Meeting You Here, which was giving me, in premise, Forget Me Not vibes. And if you are unaware, Forget Me Not was one of the best books I read last year. I recommend it to everyone all of the time. And I got Forget Me Not from the works. It is literally Back to December by Taylor Swift if it was a book instead of a song. If you ever see a copy of Forget Me Not out in the wild, buy it. Buy it straight away. It's amazing. This, very much like Forget Me Not, is about a florist, but it wasn't great. Elise is a florist, and Ben is her friend's brother. She basically ends up working with him on his mother's campaign trail to be re-elected. I want to say governor, but it might have been mayor. There was no passion. There were no sparks. It was just, more of a whimper, and not the good kind, just. So yeah, I am glad I didn't spend a lot of money on it. I grabbed this from the works as well. It was a miss for me. Total honesty, I'm gonna say if you want a book about a florist, you're way better off getting Forget Me Not than getting this. So yeah, can't say I recommend it really. Book number 23, however, was Rent to Be, and this was fantastic. I really liked this. It's a brother's best friend fake dating romance where Isla and Cade basically pretend to be dating for the summer so that he can take her with him to all of these work events, and in exchange he won't reveal the fact that she's kind of sneakily trying to live in her brother's flat while her brother is overseas. It was good. There was heart. There was spice. The characters were good. The plot was good. I pretty much liked everything about this. It isn't a particularly big book, and I got my copy from the works in the 3 for £6 deal. It was great. I was pleasantly surprised by this. I liked the premise, and I feel like the book itself delivered, which seems to be the hurdle we're coming up against with some of these. They're a great idea, but the book doesn't quite give me everything I want to. In this case, it did, for sure. Book number 24 was my actual read for Valentine's Day. So I'd read 24 books 14 days in, which I think is pretty impressive, right? I think I did a good job. This, however, I did not really enjoy. It was, yeah, actually, I was going to say it was okay, but yet again, no, I wish I hadn't picked it up, if I'm honest. It was just okay. It's the only book on my shelves that had the word Valentine in the title, so it seemed to make sense, but it wasn't really much of a romance. It posed itself as, ooh, is Annie going to head over on this work trip to New York and choose to stay there and not go back to her husband Ed? But none of that happened. There just wasn't really any turmoil. There was no drama. I mean, it showed New York off in quite a cool way, but I didn't really need convincing that New York was cool. Kind of felt like that already. And yeah, there wasn't enough romance in the supposed romance novel for me. But my Valentine's Day was actually really cool because I got to launch my romance mystery bundle with the Bookbinder. It was my first ever brand collab on TikTok, and it went really well. You could basically get 5 books for £15 in a mystery box that I had curated. So everyone who bought one of the romance mystery bundles got an entire trilogy that was very, very spicy. I only picked spicy trilogies, and then 2 other books that went with them. So the trilogy options were the Priest series by Sierra Simone, the Hot and Hammered series by Tessa Bailey, the Kiss Quotient series by Helena Huang, and the Salacious Players Club books, the 3 that are out by Sarah Kate. And then the 2-book duos were Dating Dr. Dill and Tastes Like Shakar, which are books 1 and 2 in the If Shakespeare Was an Auntie series. They're the ones that are out right now. You then had a few Christina Lauren books. It was Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, The Soulmate Equation, The Unhoneymooners, and Love and Other Words. And then there were 2 Julia Quinn books, The Lady Most Likely and The Lady Most Willing. I think the options are really good, but I'm going to say that because I picked them myself. I think the best thing about it was the value. £3 per book, guys. £3 per book. She whittled that price down with them as well. We had 500 units and we sold them all in 40 hours. So a book got bought like every 5 minutes at least. The support there was crazy. I really, really enjoyed it. And the fact that it was happening in the midst of all of this was so cool. But yeah, I'm really happy. I felt like it warranted a Bouger Book Talks mention because it's very much in the vein of I like buying cheap books and reading cheap books, and I don't like paying recommended retail price for books. So yeah, that happened. And that also means we're only halfway through this, by the way. We are halfway through because we're only on Valentine's Day. Oh, that was a nice little break, I guess, from whipping through the books. But let's dive back in because I read more in the second half of February than I did the first. Yay me!